So we were now doing how Greeks refer to poets. They call poets the maker, and the word they use for the poet is poem. Now he gives you an argument in support of how a maker, quote unquote, a maker, is again closely associated with God. And previously he tells you about Veds, the word Veds associated with prophecy and prophets. So he ties poetry with religion in previous argument about how Romans refer to poets. And the argument basically is how poetry is not a profane sector, a profane category, but is a sacred category like any other sacred things that you consider pure and sacred and associated with God and religious things. The second argument again is in favor of how poetry is again by second argument associated with God and religious things, and again a sacred thing like Romans had it. Greeks also had a word like maker for the poets, and a maker, the great maker, is God. And now he is giving you second argument of purifying the category of poets, because Puritans like Stephen goes on are attacking poetry. Now in this one he tells you a maker, how a poet is a maker, because his basic object of study, of which he makes the replica, of which he makes the likes, the copies of it, the basic object of study remains nature. So this paragraph that we read previously tells you how nature is not just only the subject for poets, but even for grammarians, rhetoricians, logicians, lawyers, physicians. For all of them, the subject of study basically is nature. This is again the reason for giving you this argument, is to purify the category of poetry and to restore the glory of poetry and bring it back to the sacred sector. The physician weighs the nature of man's body and the nature of things helpful or hurtful unto it. Again, nature of man's body is the how a man's body can naturally exist, and if there are any diseases that hurt the body, that is not the natural condition of the body, but that is the abnormal condition. So normal is natural. Here again he tells you physicians also have their basic object of study is nature of man, something natural, something that exists naturally. Then and the metaphysic, though it be the second and abstract notion and therefore be counted supernatural, yet doth he indeed build upon the depth of nature. Now again metaphysics, he says directly you will not be able to figure out how they study nature, but this again is a secondary study of the depth of nature. I'll pause this for a while and tell me if you are able to follow this. Only the poet, disdaining to be tied to any such subjection, lifted up with the vigor of his own invention, doth grow in effect into another nature, in making things either better than nature brings forth, or quite a new form such as never were in nature, as the heroes, demigods, cyclopes, chimeras, furies, and such like. So as he goes hand in hand with nature, not enclosed within the narrow warrant of her gifts, but freely ranging within the zodiac of his own wit. Nature never set forth the earth in so rich tapestry as diverse poets have done, neither with pleasant rivers, fruitful trees, sweet-smelling flowers, nor whatsoever else may make the too much loved earth more lovely. Her world is brazen, the poets only deliver a golden. What do you understand by this? Find it in it. Lawyers, physicians, and others do not do that. They show you the things as they appear in nature. They show you the actualities of it. But what do the poets do? What do the poets do?
They beautify whatever they see, matlab, in their own words, using words, rhetoric, वगैरह.
They'll add to it, they invent on it, and this way imagination is let grow. In effect, they make nature into another nature. In making things easier, sometimes easier for humans to understand, sometimes better than nature, sometimes better than how it appears in nature. For example, a wild growth, and this is beautified in writing, and it appears very beautiful as if it's very well organized, right? So sometimes it's done like that, or quite anew, something that hasn't been there before. Like I gave you the example of a mermaid. Poets have seen human beings, poets have seen large fish, but poets recreate them into mermaids. They create new forms such as never were in nature. Again, mermaid can fit in this example. Can you give me any other example here?
मैम आपकी आवाज ब्रेक हो रही है.
I said, can you give me any other example of new forms that are created like a mermaid?
Ma'am, unicorns.
Right? Now they have seen horses, they have seen wild animals with horns, they have seen mostly animals with two horns. Two are made into one, and then horse into a white colored horse. This combination becomes a new form that you never find in nature. And then also the heroes that you may not find naturally. And then not enclosed within the narrow warrant of a gifts. Narrow warrant of whose gifts?
Nature.
Yes. Nature offers only some kind of gifts, and poets are able to enhance it in their imagination. So they do not allow themselves to be fixed into that narrow boundary, but they freely range within the zodiac of his own wit. Who is his?
Poet.
Yeah. Poet's wit. Neither with pleasant rivers, fruitful trees, sweet smelling flowers, nor whatsoever else may make the too much loud earth more lovely. They are not even bound by these things, which are the quote unquote only beauties of nature. These are only beauties that nature can offer you, but a poet can enhance these beauties. Not just pleasant rivers, fruitful trees, sweet smelling flowers, which are the naturally existing ones, but they can enhance it much more. Can you give me example here? Give me any poetic example.
मैम जैसे चिनार ट्रीज को उनके कलर को ऑटम में ब्यूटीफाई करते एज रेड एज फायर. या
Yes, association of that with fire is beautifying the naturally existing thing in a newer form. So this poet who compares it with fire is not allowing himself to be fixed in the narrow warrant of the gifts of nature, but tries to freely range it within the zodiac of his own wit. Clear? Her world is brazen, the poets only deliver a golden. Now what does this mean?
Nature's world is
that
present, but
nature.
poets deliver it in a different way.
Brazen means wild. In here, brazen means wild. But let those things alone, leave them apart, and go to man. Now bring your idea closer to man, who is also part of nature. For whom as the other things are, so it seems in him her uttermost cunning is employed. Now inside the man, the creation of a character, a man. Now in the hands of God, what a man is and how he is created. Now on the other hand side, you have how does a poet create man. Okay, now go to a man. For whom as the other things are, so it seems in him her uttermost cunning is employed. Now poets think that inside a man there is the uttermost cunning of nature is secretly hidden inside of a man. in the character of a man. And know whether she have brought forth so true a lover as Theagenes, so constant a friend as Pylades, so valiant a man as Orlando, so right a prince as Xenophon Cyrus, so excellent a man every way as Virgil's Aeneas. Now who tells you there is a combination of creations in one human being? But it is the wit of a poet that he gives you, he highlights one particular characteristic, he highlights one particular characteristic in one character. Like he creates the best of lovers in Theagenes. All these examples that he has taken are from Greek and Latin texts, the ancient texts. Then Orlando, Xenophon Cyrus, and Virgil's Aeneas. Neither let this be jestingly conceived, because the works of the one be essential. So he says, do not consider them as a joke, because I have picked up some only essential writers, because the works of one be essential. The other in imitation or fiction. The works of the one be essential, the other in imitation or fiction. For any understanding knows the skill of each artificer stands in that idea or foreconceit of the work, and not in the work itself. Now what does he say in here is that this creativity of an artist, you can find these skills of each artificer, means of each poet. It stands in the idea that he picks up for the whole text. पूरे टेक्स्ट के अंदर जो उसने भरा होता है, असली जो उसका मेन प्लॉट होता है, जिसके अराउंड वो स्टोरी बिल्ड करता है, that foreconceit means before he starts working on the work, before that he has a concept. So that skill is of the poet, and you will not find that skill in the sense not in the work itself, but go behind that, the mind of the author, means go into the wit of the author. And that the poet has that idea is manifest by delivering them forth in such excellency as he has imagined them. And this idea is manifest and then becomes the work. After the idea is manifest, then you don't need to go to the work, go to the author, then it becomes a text. This concept comes in the study of reader response theory, the concept of author, the concept of the text, the concept of the reader. It's called reader response theory. The idea then becomes manifest, means it turns into a work of art, it turns into a text by delivering them forth in such excellency as he has imagined them. The imagination is associated with the author. He says that imagination, that is more important than the work that is there in your hand. Which delivering forth also is not wholly imaginative, as we are wont to say. Wont means habitual, which we are used to say. Which delivering forth also is not wholly imaginative, as we are wont to say by them that build castles in the air, but so far substantially it works not only to make a Cyrus, which had been but a particular excellency, as nature might have done, but to bestow a Cyrus upon the world, to make many Cyruses, if they will learn aright why and how that maker made him. What do you understand by this? This means that while a poet is delivering his imagination, he is not completely creating things out of the blue that you will not be able to believe it, but he has substantial creations. One, for example, if he creates a character, not just that you are able to believe in that character because he creates a real, very close to real characters. It's not just that he is creating Cyrus, a character that you are able to be. You can take the example of A good warrior. Antony was a very good warrior. Okay, let's say Antony, Shakespeare's Antony and Cleopatra. Now, he is not just creating Antony very close to a real life warrior. Antony was actually taken from one of the histories, or Macbeth. But what he has done, which has been but a particular excellency, like the character of Macbeth was an excellent character, but it's not just that he is creating substantial characters and that's why his imagination is beautiful. But in addition to that, that characteristics is given to human beings even by nature. So then what is the difference that a poet, where does this poet have an upper hand in creating a character than nature? The upper hand is that he is giving you samples. In these samples, people tend to follow them. In creating one Cyrus, he is bestowing a Cyrus upon the world to make many Cyruses. So next time he is creating Macbeth, that can create many Macbeths, but they are now careful of not committing the mistakes that Macbeth did commit. He is creating Othello. He is giving examples to the world that, look, here is this Othello who commits the mistake of doubting the loyalty of his wife, which was wrong on his part, and he ultimately murders his wife, which was wrong on his part. There was his Iago, his friend, who was actually the reason who created the confusion in the mind of Othello on purpose. So what is this writer doing? He's not just bestowing a Cyrus upon the world. A Cyrus means singular Cyrus upon the world to make, but this bestowing helps in creating many Cyruses. If they will learn aright why and how that maker made him. If they will learn aright, if they learn properly, why did he create a character like that and how did he make a character like that? Clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Neither let it be deemed too saucy a comparison to balance the highest point of man's wit with the efficacy of nature. Again, you should not be mistaken why I am trying to compare nature's creation with the efficacy of what a man's wit can create. But rather give right honor to the heavenly maker of that maker, who having made man to his own likeness, set him beyond and over all the works of that second nature. Now this is part of the gospel. This is what the gospel has it like. So he says, no, I want you to make a distinction between God and poet. Of course, God is the heavenly maker, and you need to differentiate him from that maker, which is maker with a small m, which is the poet. You have to make the distinction, but do bear this in mind that God created man in his own likeness. This is Bible, that God is light and he created humans, he created man in his own light. So there is the likeness. So he wants to say that if God creates, man is also a creator, because God has created man in his own likeness with his own light. And also God set man beyond and over all the works of that second nature. So whatever God created in this nature that he has created, he has given man the upper hand of wits. He has the most sophisticated brain and mind, which in nothing he shows so much as in poetry, when with the force of a divine breath he brings things forth far surpassing her doings, with no small argument to the incredulous of that first accursed fall of Adam, since our erected wit makes us know what perfection is, and yet our infected will keeps us from reaching unto it. So he tells you that this wit is there in every human being. You can have the evidence of that even in Adam. He had the wit. He knew that perfection is in not tasting the fruit. That is perfection. You will be in that perfect condition if you do not taste the fruit. That is erect wit. That will take you to perfection. But if this wit is infected, you will reach the lowest levels. And that's what a poet has to maintain, the distinction between perfection and being accursed, which in nothing he shows so much as in poetry. And how does a man show that he is, the best way a man can show that he has been created in the likeness of God is in the creation of poetry, because there a man becomes a creator and God is a creator as well. But in creating poetry, man requires the force of a divine breath. He needs inspiration, a divine inspiration. You have come across this divine inspiration word in Paradise Lost already. Divine inspiration is always required. So after he has that divine inspiration with him, he brings forth, he surpasses the doings of nature and creates better things. But these arguments will by few be understood and by fewer granted. Thus much I hope will be given me, that the Greeks with some probability of reason gave him the name above all names of learning. So he says the maker is a word, is a name given to the poets above all the names given to any forms of learning, like grammarians, logicians. A poet is called a maker. So he says, I want this to be granted unto me, that this argument was strong, that Greeks called poets a maker. Is it clear so far? Go back to the to what has been done so far and join the class again, and we'll pick it up from now. Let us go, but I'll take some break, 5 to 6 minutes break. Meanwhile, you will go through this portion that we have done. Give it a quick read before we start, okay?